Hello, I'm Alicia and I'm the owner of The Next Chapter. I thought I'd just come on here and explain why we're doing a charity raffle, why we're doing it, why we're supporting transverse myelitis, but the main reason for this video is who is Mowgli and why am I telling you his story. So let's get into it straight away. Mowgli goes by the names of Mumu, Moo, Mushi, Morden, but his legal name is Morgan. He's my little brother. I am one of 7 kids. All got the same mum and dad, you know. I know that's what people think no sooner I say that. We've all got the same mum and dad. Mum and dad have been together for 32 years, I think it is. I'm the oldest of the 7 and Mowgli, is the youngest. The reason I call him Mowgli is he, as a baby, never crawled. He did the Mowgli crawl. So it was just perfect. And he's now got a pet cat called Cub, which he says is part of the Jungle Book and all that sort of stuff, and Disney and bits like that. Anyway. So Morgan's actually going to be turning 18 this year. So this incident happened way back when, and he's still having to deal with it. So at 9 months old, Morgan was walking. He was walking, which it's quite unheard of. I think a lot of people or a lot of babies don't walk until they're at least 1. But yeah, Morgan was walking. Our granddad died, sadly. We had to deal with all of that. And once that was all dealt with, Dad went off to Ireland to do work, and we'd just moved house. So I'll always remember my mum and dad's room because we had all new furniture come in. Mum and dad were sleeping on a mattress in their room because their bed hadn't arrived. Their TV was on this plastic pink box. I remember it. It was like it was bright pink. It was just until the cabinets arrived, or the drawer unit arrived. So you can imagine Morgan as an 11-month-old would go up and press all the buttons on the TV, you know, and do that sort of stuff. But sadly, when he was 11 months old, and if I look down, it's because I've got my laptop, I've got some facts and figures and I want to make sure everything's correct. So he fell over or fell down while walking in the living room, and that was that. He stopped moving. He was unable to sit up, roll over, walk, crawl. The next morning, it was as if something had happened. So yeah, and like I say, I'm one of 7 kids. This happened when Morgan, or Mowgli, was 11 months old. So I was going to, I think I was going to be turning 13, and bear in mind I was the oldest. So the next 5 days involved multiple trips for my mum to A&E with Mowgli, and multiple doctors just advised it was a viral infection and, you know, he'll be fine in a few days' time, blah, 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 blah. And this is what infuriates me, actually, and I get quite emotional. I get emotional about the whole thing, and I know Morgan, if he's watching, he's going to say, grow up, get over it. It was his life. He's fine. He'll say that. But Mum went in multiple times with this baby, and she overheard, I don't know if it was a doctor or a nurse, she overheard them say, oh, she's not a first-time mum, she's got multiple kids, she's not a paranoid mum. I think that's so wrong for my mum to have overheard that. First of all, that should never have been said, but oh well. And I don't know when it was, but Morgan ended up regaining movement in his hands. And like any baby, Mum was dangling keys over him and he was trying to grip them. And I remember her saying that one of the nurses or another medical person said, oh, that's good of him. And Mum went, no, because if you know an 11-month-old, they would have like thrown those keys across the room sort of thing. But anyway, so I was almost 12. I just checked the notes. I was almost 12, so yeah. Me and my siblings went and stayed with our auntie Hayley, which is quite a distance away. I think this was during October half term, so thank gosh, because she lived about a 45-minute drive away from us. My auntie Anita and my cousin Natasha used to run things in to my mum into the hospital because my dad was trying to get back from Ireland, because at first it was like, no, you'll be fine, you don't need to come. And then when they thought it was something serious, then my dad was trying to come over or come back. Not only did they go take my mum's stuff in, they went and checked on my cat, Jack. And there's always funny stories about this. Natasha doesn't like cats. And yeah, the fact that she had to go check on him was quite ironic, really. After many tests, blood tests, lumbar punctures, which, if you know what that is, that's in your spine, in your lumbar. Imagine having to hold a baby and stick a medical device into their spine whilst they're still awake. That must be really traumatic, and I don't know if my mum was in for that, and I hope in a way she wasn't, because that must really be traumatic. I can't believe I'm crying. But yeah, he had CT scans, MRIs, and finally there was a diagnosis of transverse myelitis. Now, I don't know where this comes from, but my dad, when he got back to England, I think me and Louis is the next youngest. We came back to the house, and I think the rest of the family stayed with my auntie. And I remember my dad being on the computer late at night, and I'm sure somebody, I don't know if it's Connecticut or Georgia or somewhere in America, Dad got talking to somebody over there, and it got mentioned about transverse myelitis or something like that. I don't know if Dad suggested it to the doctors in England, or whether it was thrown around in the NHS and Dad maybe would have got advice online. I'm not 100% sure. So Morgan was diagnosed with transverse myelitis. Okay, I'll calm down a bit. So he was diagnosed with transverse myelitis. So transverse myelitis, also known as TM, is brought on by swelling and inflammation of like a spinal cord or one of your spinal cord segments. I'm looking down because this is so... it occurs when somebody comes in contact with an infection, and their immune system mistakenly attacks the spinal cord instead of the infection. So it turns out somebody at my granddad's funeral had shingles, and because Morgan was such a young baby, he just suffered from it. Like, it took a reaction. He spent 3 weeks in hospital, being treated by neurologists, urologists, physios, orthotics, and occupational health. So if you know what all of them are, that's quite crazy to think that a baby, he come out just before his first birthday. So yeah. My parents were advised a third of people make a full recovery. I can't even speak. A third of people make a full recovery, and a third make no recovery. So, again, what do you do? When Mowgli was discharged, he was able to sit up with support, kind of like when babies learn. So you put pillows behind him. If you sit him up and you propped him up, in a way, he would be able to sit up, but he couldn't sit there without anything supporting him. And over time, he learnt to crawl and walk again. Now, the inflammation of spinal cord causes nerve damage and can leave permanent scarring and lesions. The scarring and lesions interrupt the communication between the nerves in the spinal cord and the rest of the body. So I do apologise if I'm saying a lot of things that doesn't make any sense. Morgan, we were told that Morgan would never walk again, never crawl again, never be able to go toilet. And I say this because I know people with stoma bags, but that's not the normal way of going toilet. But the fact that they thought he would have to have a stoma bag and a colostomy bag, so he would pee and poo into a bag. He wouldn't have to go toilet. So my parents had to deal with that. So for Mowgli, this has resulted in him actually spastic paracentesis, I think it's called, in both legs. Neurogenic bladder and bowel. So like I say, my parents were told they wouldn't be able to do any of that. He had Botox in, I think it was his bladder. He has to have regular scans on his kidneys and his bowel and bladder. He wore a splint on his leg, which is like a plastic cast that goes on the back of the leg and the bottom, and then it straps around. He has, and I don't know if he still, no, he doesn't have to now, but he had his one shoe, if you looked at it, there was more of a sole on the bottom of it because it had to be raised. He had things inside his shoes. So yeah. I didn't want him to go to school. I thought he would be bullied. But typical Mowgli, he's a fighter. And I think because, I don't know if it's because there's so many of us that the primary school knew my family. My family were a big part of that, the primary school. And everybody knew Mowgli when he was a baby. You know, he was this fiery redhead. So I was always worried because the school we go to or went to, you start at the age of 3 and you have to be potty trained, and he wasn't. And I remember a nurse coming into our house. I remember a nurse coming into our house and teaching me and my parents how to catheterize him, which is a tube that goes inside him to pee, because they thought he'll not be able to do it all by himself, but thankfully he can. And imagine that, just being taught how to do that at the age of 13. And in a way, I think I was taught it because I'm the oldest, and if mum and dad were out of the house and I babysat, I would need to know how to do it. And I would have, because he's my little brother. I would have done that. But thankfully I'd never had to, because he, you know, goes to the toilet by himself. On the 13th of November 2023, so my birthday, I was in New York, and I was so gutted because Morgan had been waiting for an operation. Because everybody has leg length difference, but his was quite drastic. So he was having to have an operation where he would have both of bones broken, and then a fixator, like a Meccano, say, like a metal frame was put around his leg, and every so often mum had to adjust it. So he had that operation, and he had physiotherapy and bits like that. So he's still, bear in mind that's 2023, it was only 2 years ago, or almost 2 years ago, he's still fighting. He didn't participate in one of his sports days at primary school because he knew he was going to come last, and he didn't want to be last, and he didn't want to be the laughing stock, because you could tell he had some form of disability when he ran. People made comments when he wore his splint saying, oh, that's because my other brothers played football. When we was at one brother's football tournament, another parent actually said, oh, that's cool shin pads, although it weren't on his shins, it was on his calf or on the back. And people didn't know, but it actually opened my eyes up to people with disabilities a bit more, because as a kid I didn't know much about it, and we actually found another family who didn't have, their daughter doesn't have transverse myelitis or anything like that, but she has a disability, and we did a fundraiser for her because she needed a lot more specialist equipment. I just dread to think what would have happened if they didn't take my mum seriously, because people have, it travels up your spinal cord as such, and it could have paralysed certain points where he would struggle to breathe or bits like that. And there's people in wheelchairs. Morgan's very lucky in the sense that he doesn't have to be in a wheelchair. He goes off bike riding with my other 3 brothers right now, does long distance bike riding. He's so active. He never wants to be in the house. He always wants to be doing some form of exercise, sport, hates doing physio, but yeah. And it was, my mum was on Facebook, in different Facebook groups, and that's where she came across Transverse Myelitis Society. And they actually paid for Morgan to have physio. I think it was only one occasion, privately done. And he went down to London. And that's why I want to support this charity, because this charity opened my parents' eyes up to a lot of things that the NHS didn't do. And I think my parents suggested a lot of things once they'd come back from that they went and asked for things and spoke to people about it. So I just want there to be a bit more awareness of this charity, of this illness, because not many people know about it. Like, for example, it is a rare condition, 1 in 8 in a million cases worldwide a year. That's how many there is. And Morgan is a TM warrior. He's a little fighter. And that is why I'm supporting this charity and why I want people to get involved. I'm not just going to do raffles. There will be certain products I've got in the pipeline that a percentage of the profits will go to the charity. It's just, even now, even though he's had his operation, he's still not what you would class as normal when it comes to walking or running, you know. But he doesn't let it hold him back. He is a little fighter, and yeah, that is why I'm doing this, because I don't want there to be other people struggling and not getting the best resource for this. So yeah, anyway, if you do want to get involved in the raffle, there will be a link in the description of wherever this video is. And yeah, thanks for watching. Bye.